Thank you so much, Anita. Thank you very much. I want to start off this evening by thanking everyone for logging on, for giving up your time. I know everyone is so busy, and I know it's a very busy time of the year for everyone. So thank you so much, as always, for giving up your time to come and listen to us speak. We're really appreciative of it. If you've seen me speak before, you know that I always like to preface my talks with this conversation. I know when I attend webinars, I can sometimes feel really overwhelmed or perhaps not good enough, that I'm not doing something right or I'm not doing enough of something. So, I just want to say to you, don't feel like that after tonight. If you take one thing from tonight, that's absolutely amazing. We're just trying to share our resources, trying to share our techniques and show how we've embedded them in through enterprise as well. So like I said, just one thing from today, one little nugget would be absolutely amazing. Just to lead on from what Anita was saying earlier on, I just want to introduce myself a little bit in case you don't know me. My name is Lisa Young. I'm a business, geography and economics teacher in Salerno Secondary School in Salthill in Galway. I'm in the most incredible school, and again, if you've heard me speak before, you know I always say this. The girls are absolutely fantastic. They're so cooperative. They've been amazing through this whole process where I've been testing stuff out on them, showing them different videos, seeing which ones they like and which ones I can include in the book. They're just absolutely amazing girls, and I know I'm coming from a very unique point of view from that as well. I know not every school is like that, but I'm really, really lucky as well. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of what I want to talk about today. I want to look at, I'm going to get rid of some of myself there. I want to look at a little snapshot of my own classroom. So I kind of want to show you what my physical classroom looks like and then talk you through what a class would typically look like in my room. From there, then I'm going to talk about how I try to promote independent learning in the classroom and to show you how we've embedded that throughout the Enterprise second edition. I'm going to talk a little bit about AFL and OFL, so assessment for learning and assessment of learning, which are always embedded in SSE as well, that self-school evaluation aspect of things. From there, then I'm going to talk about approaching exam questions and how I try and structure how the students approach questions and then how they approach their own answers as well. And again, show you how we've embedded that throughout Enterprise. I'm going to share some of my other resources, and then Caroline is going to come on, my co-author Caroline, she's going to come on and she's going to talk about the 10-point plan for Enterprise as well. So just going to give you a little bit of an assessment of learn or and a bit of a schedule for today that we should be giving in all of our classrooms, I suppose. So I suppose how I would start off a class is I would do this thing that I've called this year called a POA. So we as a department have come together, and I suppose trying to tie in with the department's idea of learning intentions, we put up a POA or a plan of action on the board. We tried to keep it a little bit more businessy than putting up learning intentions or anything kind of like that. So we put up plan of action, and I don't go into a huge amount of detail on it. I suppose I just list down what I want to kind of cover for the day. So like, let's say, for example, the other day I was doing contract law. So I just put up that we would cover a definition of contract law, and then I would do the first three elements of a contract from there. Yesterday I had my third years, and I put up for them that I wanted to do government revenue. So I said we want to do a definition of that. We want to look at the sources of government revenue, and then from there we want to look at a capital and current revenue as well. So it's literally what I put up. I don't put up like that you need to understand them or that we need to define them or that we need to go into a huge amount of detail. I just literally list what we're going to do for the class. Some classes they like to take down, my fifth years like to take them down so they kind of know what they've covered in that class. The juniors not so much. I don't mind whether they take it down or not. It might be something I might look at for next year again for that part of it. So yeah, it keeps me on track, it keeps them on track because they know this is what I want to get covered in the class, and that they know that we have to kind of work through it as well. The next thing I would do from there is I would recap the previous class. It's very informal in my class. I might do where I might say so and so was absent yesterday, can anyone tell her what we did, and we kind of have like a classroom discussion about it. I might just say, okay, we did the definition of government revenue yesterday. Can anyone give me that definition back? What were the key words for it? Can anyone list the different sources of government revenue? And we'd kind of go down through it that way. Yes, that's basically kind of the way I kind of approach it. I know my colleague Rachel is on this evening. You know, I know she used to use lollipop sticks, and she has everyone's name on them, and to make sure that every single person got asked as well. You can go that one step further as well too. But I like to keep it quite short because I only have my first, second, and third years are for 2 hours a week, and my time is very short with them. So I try and keep the questions to a minimum if I can at all, for that part of it. I suppose there's always kind of an element of me bringing something into the classroom. So we might do an activity, and there might be a little bit of reading followed by a little bit of writing. We have hour-long classes, so I try and keep them as interactive as possible because we know that the concentration span of these young children are getting less and less, I suppose, with TikTok and all of that kind of stuff. So we used to be like they used to get like 30 or 40 minutes of an attention span. They don't have that anymore. So I try and maybe do 10 or 15 minutes of maybe reading from the book, highlighting keywords, maybe having a little bit of discussion around it, and then maybe a little bit of writing from there, or some sort of an activity to do for it. From there then, once I finish a topic, I used to go on to study clicks, and I used to print off all of the different exam questions that have come up on that topic, and we'd work our way down through them. But I'm going to show you how we've kind of flipped the switch on that one a little bit using Enterprise, and I'll discuss that in a couple of minutes. For the assessment aspect, again, I try and mix it up as much as I possibly can. You know, obviously I do the traditional aspect of giving a written test and grading it and all of that kind of stuff. Sometimes then I might do like a Kahoot, and again, I'm going to show you how we've changed that a little bit with Enterprise as well. So I'm no longer using Kahoot, I'm actually using some of the resources for Enterprise, the second edition. Sometimes I try and do project work with them as well, and I've shared those projects that I do with them, like the best place to save and the insurance policies that we've done up. I've shared all of those resources in the teacher resource book as well. So I try and mix up the assessments as much as I possibly can. And then of course I post everything to Google Classroom. I know some teachers find that a little bit time consuming, but what I do is that towards the end of the class, I try and give them maybe 5 minutes to start their homework. And that's when I would post to Google Classroom, whether it be that I'm posting my notes, whether I'm posting maybe a sample answer or a mind map that we might have done on the board that day, or whether I'm posting the homework that we would have had in class as well. I actually was at the Student Enterprise Regional Awards this morning, and my colleague, she's 2 daughters in the school, and she was saying, oh, you know, like they don't share the homework. Like teachers say, oh, get it off your classmate, but if they're not sharing the homework, and she's like, I always hear you put yours up on Google Classroom. So it's definitely something, even though I find it annoying and I find it time consuming, it's something I'm going to stick with now after hearing that today, just to make sure that everyone has access to it. And also, if they're missing for a day, whether they're sick, whether they're on holidays, whether they're at a sport event, at least I can say, well, it was posted to Google Classroom. It's a couple of days ago since I saw it. You should have your homework done, and there's no excuses on that one. So it's a good way around that one too, to keep hold of them. So I said to you there in our agenda that I was going to talk about promoting independent learning. I find when we do like our SSE evaluations from staff and from parents, that a lot of the feedback comes back and says that students are not taking ownership of their own learning. They're not building that resilience to take ownership and to take leadership in their own learning, that they're expecting the teacher to hand out the notes. They're expecting almost the teacher to do the exam for them or whatever. So I'm trying to embed as early as possible. I'm trying to embed revision techniques, exam techniques, and approaching answers as early as I possibly can. So in my classes, as I said to you earlier on, I would do a little bit of reading, and then I do a little bit of written work. Some of that written work would be where they are doing some sort of a revision strategy. So whether it's writing a definition into the definition section of their revision copy, whether we're doing out a table and we're filling in information, or whether we're making a mind map or whatever, they're doing something to build their own notes. And that's something that I was really passionate about building into the new edition of Enterprise. So throughout the whole book, we have these little do it signals, and it's basically reminding them to go and create their own type of revision. So whether it's to make a mind map or to make maybe flashcards or whatever the case might be, those little prompts are there. So the way I'm going to use them in my classroom is I'm going to do a section, and then we'll take a break and we'll do the revision strategy. They'll either make it in class themselves or I'll assign it for homework, but you're making sure that they're making those own revision notes themselves. Studies have shown, actually, again, in the student enterprise programs, where I saw this sign that said Harvard studies show that students must be active in their learning, and I was like, oh, that's perfect for tonight. So they have to be active in what they're doing. If they're going to be passive and they're just going to be reading the notes, or if they're going to be reading something that you've handed out to them, they're not active in their learning. They need to be taking ownership of their own learning and making notes that suit them as well. We've also provided them with some revision strategies as well. So at the back of the book, we provided some revision strategies. So I've given them ideas of how to make mind maps, and as we know, Caroline is the queen of making mind maps. We should talk about those later on. I find flashcards are really good for business because they put the keywords on them on one side, and then on the other side they can have the
So Lisa, can I just stop you for 1 second? Lisa? So Lisa, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? We've lost your sound just for... Let's just check. I think we have a technical issue, so let me just check that out. Please, if you can bear with us for a second. Yeah, we do seem to have lost sound. Okay, we're just going to turn off Lisa's camera for 1 moment to see if we can figure out what's going on there. So sorry about this. If you can just bear with us now for 1 moment.
Yeah, stop trying to.
The mic symbol's back. Can I try again?
You're back again? We have sound there again, guys. Apologies, everybody. We might just have to swap laptops. Okay, Lisa, we seem to have you back. Do you want to say something there for a moment?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
We can hear you, absolutely. So
All right.
do you want to share our presentation again?
Is it not share? Okay, right. I can now.
Just double check that you are still presenter. Yeah, you're still presenter, so you just want to share your...
Okay, just 1 second now we get this back up and running.
We'll just pretend that this is a commercial break without any commercials. Fantastic.
Are we back in action?
We are. Thank you, everybody. Hopefully that was just a temporary blip. Thank you, Lisa. Off you go. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm not too sure where you lost me, so I don't know how far to go back. So I would
heard the Harvard business study thing, maybe just shortly after that.
I lost you a long time ago, so that's okay. So yeah, just to refresh, the Harvard study, just when the students set up today, said that students have to be active in their learning. That's something I really want them to be active in their learning. I want them to appreciate the world that's around them and all of that kind of stuff. So one way that I do that is by when I finish a topic, like we call them in enterprise top topics, I would get them to make their own notes on that topic. So we have these little pointers throughout the book saying do it. So it's to create your own mind map or your own type of revision, whatever that might look like. And in the book, we've prompted them to go to the back of the book to these revision strategies. So we have different ones there. I'll just run down through some of them. Mind maps, obviously Caroline is the queen of mind maps. She makes incredible mind maps. My girls like when I do the mind maps with them because they love the neatness of it and the kind of the thought process of the ideas. I know some students like to make them on their own if they want to. I also love flashcards for business, and actually had a parent the other day asking me, you know, it was in fifth year now, her results weren't amazing. She's like, what can I do? And I was like, flashcards. I find flashcards are really good for both junior and senior business because on one side they might have the keyword, let's say, I'm going to try and pick something different than revenue, let's say demand, for example, and maybe then on the back of the flashcard they could have the definition of demand, they could have the factors influencing a change in a shift in the demand curve, and they might have maybe something to do with price and quantity on there as well. So I love flashcards for business. There's some other ones there like summarization, and we show them how to do that because some of them mightn't be familiar with that, going down through past exam papers and then obviously doing some maybe group study. There's loads of different ones in the book as well. Where I get my students to do this, and again, this is maybe quite unique to my girls because, you know, they're used to this. I get them to get 2 copies. One copy is what they call they call it the Miss Young doesn't care about a copy because they actually don't really particularly care about it. Within it, they can put in their own revision techniques like this. They can put in, if they're doing study at home themselves, they can put it in their class questions, homework, they can throw it all into this copy. And then there's a copy that I do care about, and I only can tell them to write into that copy, and it might be like, you know, throwing in a definition. Like I said earlier on, it could be maybe we might do out a final account, so that they have kind of these examples and that those exemplars of work in that copy as well that they can go back to and they can go over them again. One thing I do as well, which is probably quite early, is I like to do study skills. Now I'm very selfish. I only do it for business. I actually don't even do it for geography. I get them to do study skills, and I started this maybe 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and I put out a call on Twitter, as it was at the time, or X, and I said, you know, what do people do for study skills? How do you teach it in your classrooms? How do you embed it? And a lot of people came back to me, and I kind of pulled on everything and then put in a few of my own ideas. And I've made this like slideshow on study skills, and I do with my first years kind of around November time, just again showing them these techniques that I mentioned earlier on that are now in the textbook, and, you know, just showing them the importance of taking ownership of their own learning and showing them the importance of making their own notes as well. And then that kind of leads into their Christmas revision, because a lot of the first years are coming from primary school where they never would have studied before. They don't even know what that means, or they think it's going up to their room for hours on end and reading over their book but not actually doing anything with it. So I show them how to be active and creative in their own learning there as well. We, as part of the SSE team, and part of wellbeing as well, the wellbeing coordinator, she does study skills with both second years and third years at different times of the year. I'm not too sure when she does them as well, but she takes them all as a year group and she does proper study skills with them for every subject as well. So we have that in our school as well, but it's all linked into the SSE aspect of things as well. So that's how I try and promote some independent learning in my classroom. For the assessment for learning and the assessment of learning, so I said earlier on, I try and do different kind of techniques. So maybe when we finish a unit or we finish a topic, I might go back and I might do like a Kahoot, for example, or they love Blockit. And again, Rachel was the one that put me onto Blockit, and they're stealing gold from each other and all of that. What we've done in the second edition of Enterprise is we've actually created online quizzes. So you can use those instead if you want to. They're free to use with the book rather than having to sign up and all of that kind of stuff. And again, I'll talk about them a little bit later. As I said earlier on as well, I like to do maybe projects with them, particularly in first year, to try and kind of get that research element in before we start into the CBA in second year. So for example, I do one I do is for the consumer, I do the different consumer agencies, and they have to look up each consumer agency and make like a little pamphlet for the agency. Again, I put them into groups for that. For the banking and savings and borrowing chapter, I get them to the best place to save activity. So I put them in groups based on where they're living, and they would go visit maybe their local credit union, their local bank, whether it be AIB, Bank of Ireland, and they'd go and visit the local post office, and they would get some information about like their opening hours, their interest on savings, different types of accounts, all of that kind of stuff. And then they have to present to the class on which one is the best place to save and why you should save there. And then we pick a winner at the end as to where would be the best place to save. So that's just some ways I try and kind of make it a little bit more fun and all of that kind of stuff. Another thing I do is I try and get them used to the exam structure, the exam style of question very, very early on in first year. And as I said to you earlier on, what I would do is usually I would go to study clicks, I'd grab all the questions that are on that topic, and then I'd print them all out and then I give them to the kids. And it was time consuming making it and printing it, and then there was the printing issue and all of that kind of stuff. So what we've done is into the textbook, we've put in this Be Prepared examination corner, and they're all past exam questions that have come up on the particular topics. This one here is from Unit 18, and this is on demand, supply and equilibrium. So we've passed exam papers up there so that you can be working your way down through them. We often have exam techniques in them as well, so maybe pointing out where you would gain marks if you did a certain way, or you read it in a certain way, or if you put down a certain answer, what you would have gained marks for. It's a great way to get them practicing past exam questions and getting used to the exam paper so that they're very much used to those style of questions. And then in the activity book, we've put in another style of exam corner, but these are all questions based on past exam papers, but they're new questions. They're just ones that Caroline and I have made up, but they're very much based on past exam papers. So it's getting them more used to seeing different style of questions on a particular topic. One thing that I used to do for the last, I think 2 years, I was kind of doing this, was this think like an examiner activity. So I'd get them working in pairs. They would each make up a question on the unit, and they'd also make up a marking scheme for it as well. And then I'd give them like maybe 20 minutes, depending on what the topic was. And then they would swap over, and they would, the other student would have to answer the question. And then they swap back and they do the marking scheme and show them where they gained marks and they lost marks. Again, it's getting into that mindset of being like an examiner, of the type of question that might come up, and getting into the mindset of the type of answer that they might be looking for and all of that kind of stuff. So the think like an examiner question is there up the top of the page, which just says, based on this unit, devise an exam question that you think is important. I found that activity really fun for the last couple of years, and they get so uppity in themselves when they're doing the marking scheme. She's like, well, would this be accepted? And I'm like, well, you're the marker, you came up with the marking scheme, would it be accepted? And then they have to go back and they have to figure out whether it would be or it wouldn't be. So it's a great way. It's kind of fun, and kind of giving them a kind of like a little bit of an elevation that to think that they might be like an examiner as well. I mentioned earlier on about the revision quizzes. So we've worked really closely with Gail in creating these online revision quizzes. They're really, really good. They're very much different style of questions. So they hopefully suit every single learner in the classroom. Some of them are multiple choice. Some of them are typing the answers. Some of them are just looking at an image. There's lovely different activities and ways that you can work down through it. So as I said, I'm going to probably use it when I use it at the end of a topic. But it also is great to have in the bank, you know, on a Friday where they're like wild, where it's last class, like our first year's tomorrow, last class, and it'd be great just to pull out this and book the Chromebooks for it. Or maybe on a day where a lot of them are gone, maybe on different sporting activities. My second years, they're all into soccer and hockey and all that. So there's some classes that I would only have maybe about 10 of them left. So again, I can book the Chromebooks and whip out a few of these quizzes, which is absolutely fantastic as well to have there as well. So that's my assessment for learning and my assessment of learning as well. The bug technique. So again, if you've heard me speak before, you've probably heard me say this, but one of the first encounters I ever had with Caroline McHale, one of the first times I met her, was I drove up to Leitrim or somewhere after school to hear her speak in an education centre, and I ended up being late because of Galway traffic, needless to say. And when I met Caroline, just as I walked in, she was talking about this bug technique, and I just loved it, and I've taken it with me ever since. So the bug technique is where you put a box around the outcome verb, you underline what is being asked in the question, and you glance back at the question before you begin writing. And before I go into any more detail on it, I just want to show you here the Chief Examiner's Report, which is the only report that we have so far in the new junior cycle course, which came from 2019. I know you can all read, but I'm just going to take a second to read it. It says that it's very important for both teachers and students to realise the importance of outcome verbs when answering examination questions. Some examiners recommend the use of the bug approach in the classroom as follows. So box around the outcome verb in the question, underline the key words in the question, and glance back over the question to ensure your understanding. So I'm sure everyone has noticed this, but the outcome verbs in both junior and senior business are so important. Outline, describe, explain. They're requiring at least one sentence and a statement and an explanation, if not 2 sentences in the point. So if the students are putting a box around that outcome verb, they know, okay, I need to explain this. So that means more than just a word or a sentence. I need to give a little bit more detail on it. Underlining the key words in the question, that's really important, particularly in the new junior cycle business course, where you're often maybe asked, like, what are the social consequences? You need to underline the social aspect. What's the perspective from maybe the European Union? What's the impact on Irish businesses, the Irish consumer? And by underlining those words and underlining what is being asked of them, they're able then to kind of say, okay, I need to focus in here on the consumer. I have to put on my consumer hat and I have to answer this from the point of view of a consumer. And so that's really important when you're using the underline aspect of it. And then glance back at the question before you begin writing. Again, it's just to keep that refresher in your head. You've thought about your answer. You just read back over it really, really quickly and make sure, am I answering the questions being asked? Yes. And then you go ahead and you answer it. And again, we have put those little reminders in there again. So like, remember to make your own notes on it and make sure that you use the bug technique. Make sure you see all of those kind of little reminders are in throughout the textbook as well. There's other versions of bug that you can use as well. I know Rachel uses hug, for example, or another one I saw the other day, but instead of glance back at the question, it was go. I had a 5th year there the other day, and her grade had really improved since her March midterm, or since her Christmas exams to her March midterms. And she was walking out of the room the other day, and she goes back to me, that bug technique actually works. I'm really? I didn't know that. Of course, like, I'm telling you, I wouldn't have been wasting my time otherwise telling you. So it was great to see her confidence building back up and to see that she was taking on board what I was saying to her and using it as well, which is really exciting. One thing I do with my 3rd years is my guided revision, and I know this has been really popular, and I always share this every year when I do it on the Guild platform as well. So I have this revision checklist that we go down through every single year. So there's no excuses with this. I give this to them in like the 1st to 2nd week of September. And as you can see there, the first question this year was due on the 16th of the 9th. So they know that they have to revise over, let's just take that first one there, they have to revise over Unit 1, which is personal resources. I've broken down kind of what the top topics are from it. So the personal resources, needs and wants, influences of needs and wants, and opportunity cost. And then they answer the exam questions on it. Now, there might seem like there's a lot of exam questions there, but a lot of them really kind of like tick the box, or they're short questions, just to the nature of the exam paper. So they have to answer 3 questions for me on it. And then I've given them a couple of other boxes there. So if they've got questions for me, so they can write them in there. This year, they had no questions for me written into this. Other years they might. The second box there, if they've got the topic revised, so they can tick that off. And then as they complete the exam question again, they tick that off. And I take about maybe 20 minutes of the first class of every week, and we go down through it. I show them the marking scheme on the board. We go down through and we correct together. They can ask me, would this be accepted? Would that be accepted? And I can give my opinion on that. And they get to see how the marks are allocated as well. Sometimes I get them maybe to swap over their work as well, so have their friend correct it. And sometimes I might take up their copies and I might check them myself just to check in that everything is okay. There is no excuse to this. I'm a lovely teacher. I'm really nice to everybody. I'm really fair. But when it comes to this, I'm like, if you don't have this done, you were told back in September, you knew it was due for this week. There's absolutely no excuse. So they know every single month. I think this week, I think they might have something on demand and supply due for me, I think for next week. I think that was the topic for next week. And they have to do the revision aspect of it. And how I keep on top of the revision aspect to make sure that they're actually doing it is I get them every so often. I'll just be like, close all your books. We're doing a quick 10-minute test. And they kill me, they hate it, but it's just a great way to make sure that they're actually keeping on top of the revision, that they're not just doing it the night before saying, oh God, I've Miss Young tomorrow, I better get these exam questions done or she's going to kill me. At least, you know, I know that they're keeping up on top of the revision as well. Also from a teacher's point of view, for, I suppose, kind of staying on top of things with the parents as well, it's great when it comes to parent-teacher meeting. Well, she didn't have her exam question due, it was due last week and she didn't have it done, she's not keeping up with her revision. It's a great way for me to say, you know, she needs to keep up with her revision. She either is or she isn't doing it, and it's just really good to do that as well. Like I said, that's always available every single year on the Guild platform. I always share it. I do it for geography as well, and they're always available. A new feature that we have brought in to kind of tie in with the revision aspect of things, I suppose, for different styles of learners, we've brought in videos into the second edition of Enterprise. So I used to find that, like, when I was maybe teaching a topic, again, to kind of break up the monotony of kind of just learning or reading something from the book, I would show a video. So a lot of the videos that I've used, I've put into the second edition of Enterprise, and the links are there throughout the book. So it just says, like, go to YouTube and search up, in this case, the Enterprise Ireland overview, Ireland Innovation at the Edge. You can watch them in class if you want. That's the way I like to use them. Some teachers like to maybe get them to watch them at home or whatever. But I just think it's a great way of kind of breaking up a couple of minutes, and they all love videos, particularly in geography. They love watching the videos. So that's really good. One other thing that I've kind of wanted to do for the last number of years, and I finally did it this year, was I wanted to do short revision videos as well. Now, I thought initially they might only be 10 minutes long, but they're ending up being 20 minutes long. And it's basically, when we finish a topic, I've been recording it throughout the year. I'm nearly finished now, and then I post them to Google Classroom. So let's say, for example, I was doing insurance there the other day at my first years, and I finished up. I did a quick revision video on it, just talking through. I go first of all to the learning outcome, and I kind of show them what the learning outcome says, and then I kind of say, okay, these are the top things that you need to know from this chapter. From there, then I go down through the chapter with them using the textbook, and just highlight kind of keywords, different areas that maybe have come up on the exam paper before that might be a nice question to come up in the future. And then I go to the last page of the book, where the exam corner is, and I would say to them, you know, these are the type of questions that came up before, this is how you should answer it, this is the way the marking scheme went for it, and I kind of break it down like that. My third years are loving it. They said to me today, have you got the one for demand and supply up yet? I was like, yeah, it's up there, it's yours. So they love watching back over it, and just kind of, I suppose, being able to pause me, or apparently what they're doing is they're speeding me up, and apparently I sound hilarious when I'm on 2 speed, but anyway, there you go. At least they're listening to it, at least they're taking something from it. My first years and my second years are really getting into it as well, which is fantastic. I love to do a little bit on business literacy as well. So we've included this. I used to have it as a poster on my wall. So I do a little bit on business blunders. So I find students are, you know, they're using money, or they're talking about stuff or things. So just try and get them to use different words. I've put this, as I said, up on the wall, and it's also in the textbook as well. So instead of money, using terms like finance, income, wages, that kind of idea as well. And I suppose, you know, we've kind of accessed all the different types of learners. We've reading material, we've watching material as well. The reading material here is from the business bookshelf. And again, I have this pinned, and it's up on my walls, and it's up on the Gill app as well. So it's just like a list of different books that students can read that are related to the business topics, whether it's business, junior cycle, leaving cycle, economics, or the accounting aspect of it. I went to a past student who was an avid reader, and she gave me some ideas for the books. And I also was sitting in Hodges and Fagan in Dublin. I'm not a reader. I was sitting there waiting for my husband one day, and I met this lovely guy that works there that told him my idea of wanting to put this together, and he helped me a lot to put this together too as well. So, you know, it's a great way if the students are into reading and all that, that they have that there for them as well. And again, this is all available on the Gill platform too. And the last thing I put up on the board, because if you're not a reader like me and you like to watch stuff, I have the business box. I got this from an idea from Twitter from this guy I was doing it for geography. So I put together a business one, and yeah, it's just different videos, different movies, different clips, different documentaries that are out there that are related to the business course. With this one, I've linked it into where it's in with the course, so like the social network, how to link it in with entrepreneur skills and characteristics. I find the Sheen Machine is great. It's available on YouTube. It's free. It's a Channel 4 Investigates documentary, and I usually watch it after I've done the sustainability aspect of the consumer. It's a really, really good one to watch. And again, if you're stuck on a Friday evening, Coca-Cola's Dirty Secret, The Truth About Adidas and Nike, Cadbury Exposed, they're all really good. They're all free on YouTube that you can watch them. And there's like loads of different discussions that you can have around them, and the way they link into the course as well. So that is it from me. I'm going to hand you over to Caroline, and she's going to talk a little bit about our 10-point plan for enterprise. I hope you got something out of that.
Okay, thank you very much, Lisa. My name is Caroline McHale, and I love writing resources, and I'm huge into teaching and learning and how to simplify everything and make it easy for all types of learners. I was teaching business studies for the last 2 years in Presentation de La Salle College, Bagenalstown, a fantastic school, very much a mixed ability. And what I wanted from my students is they would have fun and get a love for business studies. But anyone that knows me knows I'm very competitive and want my students to achieve the highest mark from the distinction, etc. I'm going to kind of recap what Lisa was saying about Enterprise, our second edition. And of course, I'm doing it through a mind map. I'll just recap that the book itself is very much, when we're writing it, logical, broken down into achievable chunks through topics. And there's all these, as Lisa said, exam tips, and very much tabulated, etc. We recommend you commence the class with an anticipation exercise. And in our activity book, we have one for each unit. They're usually 4 to 6 statements. You shouldn't have any more because it defeats the purpose. But for your anticipation exercise, you can have a bit of fun too. If I was doing the EU, I'd bring in the EU flag. Everyone knew on budget day, I loved the budget. So I'd bring in a folder with budget 24 on it, or 25 for the next one now, and say, I'm such good humor today. Today is my favorite day of the year because it's actually budget day. And I would do that budget with first year, second year, and third year. And it gave me classes also for CSPE too. So just reinforcing the learning with it. The second point about our Enterprise book as such, and I'm going to recap on it, the importance of writing notes. I found that first years, second years and third years find it difficult to do summaries. So again, that state, explain 2 points and an example if possible. And because students sometimes rewrite the same point twice and they don't get the marks, we'd always say write it from 2 different perspectives or 2 different themes to ensure that they're 2 different points. And we have all this information tabulated. So if you were doing tax, are you doing it from the individual, the business, or from the government perspective? Our activity book links very much with our book. Each topic, then you go and you do the questions. I had a bugbear about students where they would just open their book, open the activity book, and just write the answers, transcribing them directly from the book. And I used to say to them, this is a waste of time. Attempt it without the book to see how much you actually know. Learn it and know it first, and then attempt it in the actual book. And then on to Post-its. I love Post-its. The Christmas present from one of my students was a whole box of Post-its in every color that they could actually find. Post-its are great. We have them in our book. We have them with the key terms. But also you can use them in a variety of ways. You could have actually pair work where they check with each other, do they actually know the information? On budget day, I actually would bring in a poster with Post-its summarizing the budget, and students in pairs got an opportunity to take one down, to look at it, and then to communicate to the class what it actually was about. My students used to call it the making it actually stick. So you can have great fun with the Post-its, and you can use it in a variety of ways, and you can actually get the students even creating their posters. And in the Enterprise book, we actually have a summary of the main terms in Post-its. Following from that, because again, what we're finding is students coming in first year, they don't have the business terms. And for a word to become fluent, you need to use it 17 times. And we're very aware of that. So our book is really like a learning resource with a lot of reiterating, recapping, and we know that repetition is the key to retention. Whether we like it or not, 50 to 70% of the information is lost within 24 hours unless we have review and recap. So the A to Z we go to, and the A to Z is kind of a dictionary. In the activity book, it's blank. I don't get them to fill it in initially. I get students to ask each other, or I get them to go through it. Do they know all the different terms? And then in our Enterprise book, we actually have all the answers to that. Also, it's an opportunity to write in perhaps a new word or something new that happens as a result of something happening in our economy, which actually links to junior cycle business studies. Next, we have the mind map. Now, the mind map, again, I'd ask students to create it, but I find with the juniors, they're not able, they don't have the skill, they don't know how many points to do, whatever. Our mind maps are carefully designed. They link with the topics that we have in each unit. So if there's 5 topics, there's 5 points in the mind map. And interestingly, they're the Christmas presents. I photocopy them out in A3s from the book for all my friends, students and stuff. And I asked somebody the last day, what did you like about the mind map? And he said, what I liked about the mind map was, I know what I have to know. And it's the full unit or chapter summarized in 1 page. And not only that, coming near the end, we have the whole course on 1 sheet, an actual mind map with a summary of everything. And the students loved it, and I had it printed out and up on the wall as well. And they knew where we're at the course and how much more that we actually have to do. As Elisa mentioned, our exam questions taken from the exam papers are at the end of each of those units. And we've lots of tips and things and what to look out for and what not to look out for, and them very similar in even color, layout, etc. So by the time the students coming to do the exam papers, it's nothing new to them. They're quite familiar and they're really well prepared. Also in our enterprise book, the 2nd edition this year, we have QR codes which link to summaries of each unit. And the summaries are usually 1 page to 2 pages. And for the accounts, what we have is a sample question with everything that could possibly be asked. And the students love that. They can link up themselves and they have a word processed summary linked in to the book as such. The revision, I'm huge into revision. My 1-hour classes, the first 10 minutes were revision. And you start with the unit 1, when that's finished, going to unit 2 for a few seconds and back to unit 1 again, the main points, and constantly reiterating and remembering what the key points are as such. I think as teachers, we have to be very smart about our revision and about our learning. And for the CBA, I always use my entrepreneurial journey. We have a poster of this in our new edition, the 2nd edition of Enterprise. And what my entrepreneurial journey is that a student interviews a local entrepreneur. They then imagine that they've actually set up a business. It could be in 10 years, 20 or 30. And they look back and they talk about the business and they design a 10-point poster plan. And then they reflect on what they learned, any new skills they developed, and would they be interested in being an entrepreneur in the future. And I suppose in Bagnallstown, where I was teaching, it was anything from farmers, Keenans, Willie Mullins with the horses, etc. So the students learned so much. For those 3 weeks on the CBA, I insisted on certain words. So there was numerous learning outcomes from enterprise, from marketing, from the accounts, from sustainability, from taxation, and again, reiterating and learning for all. And they got to present then this, and we had a little competition with it, which was great. And actually for the student enterprise competition, we entered it and our student won. And I think, Lisa, the first year they had it, your student won too. So that was great, but they actually loved it. And they loved the fact that it was a local entrepreneur. They felt that it made more meaning for them as such. And finally then, for the using of the book, we recommend the reflection. You revisit the notes that you have carefully written. We also go back on our anticipation exercise that we had at the beginning to double check. And then you go into the abbreviations, and then you kind of complete the unit reflection at the end of each book. I also forgot to mention that there are case studies, short case studies at the beginning of each unit. And those case studies are based on maybe an enterprise or based on the government or something that's happening. And the questions are quite simple, and it's actually to help the weaker students because the answers are actually in the case. And sometimes we put in a question like, why might the government charge tax? And using the word might can actually make a huge difference, encouraging more students to actually participate. So that really recaps what our Enterprise 2nd edition has and how it embraces a logical approach to learning and ensuring that students can achieve success in business studies. I'm just going to show you an example of a mind map there. So Lisa is an example, and what it is a summary, and that particular one is of demand and supply. There was 3 topics in that particular unit, and then the mind map broken down into the 3 units there, and a great revision sheet that they can actually have and prepare them for success as such. So finally, I'd like to say that this is what we have to offer in Enterprise, our 2nd edition. We have the book, which is more than a book really. It's a learning process. We have linked with that the activity books, and lots of, as Lisa mentioned, lots of online resources this year for that day that you're stuck for something to do, or you're giving them a break, because 1 hour classes, it's nice to break it up into achievable chunks as such. Thank you very much, and I hope that you picked up some kind of tip from there, as my students used to call my mind maps Caroline's cheats.
Oh, Caroline and Lisa, thank you so much for a brilliant presentation, very practical and very helpful. And thank you for not being too phased by our technical blip that we had in the middle of that. And I apologise again to our attendees, and thank you all for staying online. Nobody dropped off during that time, so thank you very much for that. Guys, we have a very short amount of time left, so I'm just going to address questions that came in during the registration process from you, and we'll just see how many we can get through if Lisa and Caroline are okay with that. So the first one that I've made note of here was from Josh, and he asked, what are the main causes for students not achieving full marks besides not knowing the content? Which would you like? Great,
I'll
thanks.
take that one. Yeah, thanks. I suppose, as I said earlier on in my talk, the exam technique aspect of it, I always find with both junior and senior business, it's almost like you're playing a game, and you need to have the exam technique aspect of it, but you also need to have the content part of it. The exam technique part of it, I suppose, we really embedded this time throughout Enterprise. We have, I suppose, listened to people's feedback about what they liked from the 1st edition, about how exam orientated it was, and we've ran with it. We've just added on so much more onto that. So the couple of things that I would kind of that jump to mind straight away from that for me would be, I suppose, first of all, the bug technique, approaching your questions, putting a box around the outcome verb, underlining what's being asked, glancing back at the question, making sure that you know whose perspective you are talking about, legal, ethical, consumer, EU, whatever the case might be. From there, then it's approaching your answers aspect of it. And again, it's that stating and explaining. You have to remember that for every statement, they're getting between 1 and 2 marks. And for every explanation, then they're getting the reverse. So if they're getting 1 mark for stating, they're getting 2 marks for explaining, or vice versa. 1-word answers are not going to get you marks in the junior cycle exam. You need to make sure that you're developing out those sentences, that you're giving those full sentences as well. So I think they're kind of the question aspect, the answer aspect of it. And then finally, small things like putting in, if the euro sign isn't given to you and you're required to give an answer with the euro in it, put the euro sign in, or units, or for example, in the demand and supply questions, the last couple of years it's come up, down the bottom of it has been like that the answers are in 000s, and making sure that you put in, like, if the answer is 600,000, making sure you put in those extra zeros and you don't just leave it at 600, that it's 600,000. So I suppose those little tiny little tweaks and those little tiny aspects of it are really, really important. Caroline, what do you think?
Yeah, and I'm just going to say, same with example also for the accounts, when they're doing the analysed cash book, and suddenly they're transferring it to the ledger, they're inclined to write analyze cash book in details. And I'll be going, oh no, it has to be cash/bags. We've kind of tips like that. Or how many days in the month, your balance to be carried down has to be the 31st of the month, and then bring it down, and the 1st of the month, starting it off there. Or something like they say, oh, Ireland is a member of Europe rather than the European Union. So making them look out for those it's those little things that make the difference for the distinction.
They all seem so obvious when you say them here, don't they? But yeah, brilliant tips. Thank you very much. I think Josh might be happy with that. Carmel has given us one. Caroline, I suspect this is probably your area. Final accounts, any teaching aid for weaker students?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that, because I love teaching accounts, and I love simplifying them and making them fun. And students come in with the perception that accounts are difficult, And I'm kind of going, no, they're not. The calculator does the adding, and you're literally putting things in a logical sequence. And I like logic because I'm chaotic at other times as well. So in our book, in the first strand, we actually introduce a basic cash account. And you're probably wondering, why are we putting smileys like happy if it's cash in and sad if it's cash out? But primary school students use smileys all the time for reflection. So they're actually used to that method. So it's really building on what they've actually been doing to make it easier for them. But to go to the final accounts, I start so basic. I say I buy, I sell, profit. My income statement is sales minus purchases is profit. And then I say, oh my God, next year I had some stock left over. So that's closing stock, you know, or opening stock, and you add that onto your purchases, and then I had some left over, so you minus that. I keep it very simple. I actually don't bring in carriage inwards and customs duties for a while. And then I talk about expenses and all the expense of running, and I'm talking about how you have to pay bills like what, you know, the heat, the light, etc. And then I talk about, I apply everything to myself. My car out there is depreciating. It's still only a 171 cash guide, but your what harm, it's an expense, and don't forget depreciation. When I start bringing in the carriage inwards and customs duties, I start bringing it in as a short answer question all the time. The next day I might say, well, actually, I bought something from the UK. I bought new clothes from the UK, and there was actually tax on it. It was customs duties. I'm going to have to add that onto my purchases because that's costed. And the same with carriage inwards. And they get used with repetition, 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 and keep moving on. For the statement of financial position, I say this is only just a list of your assets, things you have, and of your liabilities, things that you owe. And get them familiar with the practice. And even the weakest of students actually find it very achievable. But it's this perception that you kind of have to break down when you get them first of all, and making it easy. And if anyone wants any help from that, I'd be delighted to follow it, because I loved when my students loved accounting element of business studies.
You make it so accessible, Caroline. I almost wish I'd done business in school, almost. Look, we might have time for one more. Denise asked, the course is so broad, what is the best revision for students to do?
Okay, well, I suppose, you know, what Lisa has said all through this event is the main points, the revision, you know, writing it down. Like sometimes when they say it, they're not able to write it as well. So I'm huge into that. They write, they write, they write. And for the last, I suppose, they only need to know a little bit about everything. And I suppose when I'm back teaching after being out of teaching for 20 years, the second year, so I didn't have in first year, they had spent, their copy was full of examples of budgets, and they didn't know it then when they came into second year. So I'd be saying move on, because you find the final year when you're doing the revision that they actually begin to pick up everything. So little bits about everything. Like I don't really do club accounts. I just tell them about a little bit about subscriptions, would be money in, and green fees, etc. And the same with ratios. I keep to the main accounts, the analysed cash. And then when I'm doing the budget, I say, oh, this is great. This is the same as the cash flow forecast. And I'd sometimes have a look at it and just to show them, isn't that brilliant? That'll be another topic that we have done. And then at the very end, when we go to do all the exam papers, they know, I say there's no point in doing the exam papers at the very end unless you know all your information. So I get them writing the answers down. And if something comes up like desk research, I get them to write, oh, what's the other type of research? So then they fill it in the very last 2 to 3 weeks, their actual exam papers. And I make them write, and what are the main points do you know about that point, etc. So that becomes their final resource for the icing on the cake there for them.
Fantastic. I'm afraid we need to cut it short there, and we didn't get to quite as many questions as we hoped we would. I'd like to again take the opportunity to thank Lisa and Caroline for a brilliant presentation. Thank you very much. I will remind you that any questions we didn't get to, they will not go unanswered. We will get the answers to you either through your rep or from the office, so don't worry about that. Just to let you know, Enterprise Second Edition is available now. The reps are out and about in schools already delivering samples. If they haven't been to you, they will hopefully be into you in the next week or so. If you urgently require one, please do get in touch with your rep. For whatever reason, they'll be able to help you with any of your questions. You will receive an email tomorrow with the recording of this evening's webinar, so you can share that with your colleagues if you need to, or whatever you need that for. And you'll also receive the free resource that we said that we would give you during your registration, which is the revision and assessment resource. So that'll go out with tomorrow's email as well. So there's going to be a very short survey that's going to pop up on screen at the end of this. It's only about 3 or 4 questions. We would really love it if you'd fill it out. So thank you very much in advance for that. So I'm going to say good night now. Again, I want to thank you very much for sticking with us during our technical hitch and for joining us this evening. It was lovely to have so many of you here. Thank you very much and enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Bye.